As I rub my belly. I think that's everybody. Luke might have a young love, so we'll excuse him. All right, what else? All right. Our featured poet of the evening is a Long Island native. He is the author of New York and Other Lovers and Low Italian Poems. He's here visiting us all the way from NYC. Give it up for George Guida.
Thank you, C. Thank you, everybody, for being so warm and gracious and just generous with, sharing your lives in poetry. So I hope I can honor you as you have honored me with some work tonight. So I do come from New York, so here's my first poem, Your Mother. I celebrate your mother and sing your mother, and what I assume your mother shall assume. And though I could not stop for your mother, she kindly stopped for me. Your mother, after all, is not so old I could omit her, because there is no country for old mothers. In fact, I saw your mother the other day, starving, hysterical, naked, her eyes nothing like the sun. I will not call her mistress, though she may be so sweet, 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 sweet mother. Next to God, America, I, and everyone stopped breathing when your mother whispered along the keyboard to Peter Quince, who placed her in Tennessee where ignorant armies clashed by moonshine, who turned to me and said, "Ah, love, let us be true to your mother too." And it's true. I too dislike your mother. But in her, I find a place for the genuine fear that she may cease to be, not waving, but drowning, washing up on some farther shore, that I may stumble over her, exclaim, "I fall upon your mother, I bleed." I fear your mother has not a stately pleasure dome decreed. For old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on this farm he had your mother. So let us go then, you and I, when evening is spread out against your mother with sawdust in her hair, as she wanders lonely as a cloud. Had I but whirled enough in time to make your mother run, or walk in beauty, or sag like a heavy load, or just explode, I would take her to a cottage under the sea and say, "Never more will I go gentle into that good mother." Then a wine-dark muse will inspire a tiger or little lamb or glowworm to ask, "My son, hast thou slain the jabber mother?" But what happens to a mother deferred? Does she jazz June? Does she stop by the woods on a rainy evening? Good mothers do make good neighbors. Does she understand how much depends upon a high-heeled mother glazed with bathwater beside the white poodle? I hung on like death to your mother, for doce et decorum est pro matria mori. But when I consider how your mother is spent, I know I have wasted her life. So I am leaving a Coney Island of your mother, aware she hands on misery to man and deepens like a boastful self. I see the apparition of these faces in your mother and say, "Oh mother, your mother, this baby is through." Wow. What happens when you teach the same poems for way too long. Lose. I've always loved the New York Yankees, so this is my message to them. Lose. Just lose. Lose and lose. Lose and lose and lose. Keep on losing even when you can win. Lose like you'll never win again. Lose all the games you play, even the ones in your heads. Lose to teams with half your payroll. Don't even think about October baseball. Lose all your games in May and June. Lose 9 out of 10 on a West Coast swing. Drink yourself sick on the plane ride back and get swept in a 12-game homestand. Yeah. When your next great prospect comes along, rush him to the majors and blow out his arm. Or shake his confidence by yanking him with 2 strikes on a batter so that when you need him in a big game, he implodes. Or just lose before that, so big games are fading memories of glory. Forget your tradition. Forget your penance. Lose with swings as mighty as the babes. Juggle the lineup and lose anyway. When your best hitter is healthy, bat him ninth. Take your starter off a pitch count. Let your closer pitch 2 innings every day. Give the catcher some time in center field. When you're sick of losing, fire the manager and replace him with a coach from single A. Sell out your season tickets, raise the prices of all concessions, sign an even bigger broadcast deal, print World Series tickets 8 months ahead, then lose, lose, lose until all players' shoulders slump and they blame one another in post-game interviews. Lose until the stands are empty, until everyone is traded away and no one cares. Lose until the owner has to sell and the once proud franchise is buried beneath a new name in a glass boomtown where they're reinventing the game. Then come back as shades and fill their rookies with self-doubt, but begin by losing today. Muff a lazy fly to left. Give up a leadoff walk. Strike out with the bases loaded. Run through the stop sign. Lose, lose, and lose some more. Please, reward our loyalty. Show us some respect. Show us that you're with us. Show us how baseball is life.
Wow.
So it's not Christmas, but there are always a lot of Santas around, right? So in New York we have, and here too, I guess, Santas from everywhere, so, of all stripes. So this is called Black Santa. He's a white dude from the suburbs, so he figures he'll try the city. He's looking for Black Santa at all the malls in black neighborhoods. His daughter isn't used to the subways and is getting tired of the trips, but the search isn't hers. He's always been seeking Black Santa. When as a boy he begged for him, his parents said, "There's no such thing. Santa Claus comes from the North Pole." But if there were white people at the equator, why couldn't there be black people at the top of the world? If he fakes living vicariously now, can you blame him? Inside a shopping center near Central Station, he hears a hearty ho 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 coming from the second level in what sounds to him like a black voice. He practically drags his girl up the escalator only to discover that this Santa is merely a South Carolina cracker, the kind of man you see in old footage, in fedora and short-sleeve button-down shirts, sicking dogs on demonstrators, aiming a water cannon at a 10-year-old, not much of a listener. At another Meet Santa venue, he believes he struck Black Santa gold when a jovial brown-skinned man in traditional Claus garb sits beaming at a multi-hued line of tots waiting to leap on his lap. He gets within a few feet of Santa before he realizes that the red suit has thrown him. Santa is more bronze than anything, and any fool could see that here is in fact Indian Santa. He's ready to give up when on a tip from a sympathetic friend he tries an exurban galleria where, sure enough, he and his girl approach honest to God Black Santa on a throne outside the Christmas store. He fights the urge to fall on his knees and kiss Kris Kringle's feet. His daughter, whom he's been coaching for weeks, eyeballs Father Christmas, whose kinky hair is visible now at the fringes of his fake beard. As if asked to sit on an examination table, she mounts Black Santa's knee. The man begins to weep. After all these years, he's finally where he wants to be, his fondest hopes in what have to be the most merciful of hands. I think it's the only Black Santa poem. Second asshole. That's the expression we use, like I need a second asshole. We could have said, you can have it, but we never paid attention to the moonlight. We were too busy thinking about everything that needed to be fixed. In those days, a lot of things broke. Even simple things like hammers would lose their heads, and we never thought of not nailing them back together. We could have said, like a hole in the head, or like a needle in the eye, but we were closer to our assholes and to words that stood for everything we'd have to take and curse under our breath and let go without throwing punches at the invisible god of the rectum, who anyway would have been too busy finding new ways to give us indigestion, so we stuck with it. There was no way to move on. We had to tell our stories to anybody who listened. We didn't lodge complaints or post to the internet. We were offline. We only knew things we could break and fix ourselves, like arguments with wives over kids we knew we had to have and weren't afraid to think of as breaking our balls. We didn't need therapy, not for them, not for us. We didn't like our wives or our brothers or ourselves as much as we like to talk about how much we didn't like them. And for that, we only needed the closeness of bodies and all their functions not left to imagination. If we were British, we would have said, piss on it, which would have been fine. At least then we would have been doing something. We were left instead with a part of our bodies we couldn't aim, and that was the problem. The asshole was a border we didn't draw that we had to accept, almost all the time, invisible to the world. It was the least likely place to take a stand. We understood we needed it, but knew it was the last thing we should want. We sit comfortably now, we throw broken tools away, but buy everything and watch the new, not knowing if we'll need it. Some asshole will tell us we will. We'll mumble that we knew a world you could have before this one. We knew how to say what we meant and hold it in. We still don't need a second asshole.
Okay.
How am I doing on time, sir? Okay. Pleading to the charges. The clerk, once a heartbreaking beauty and still fit, follows the Spanish translation like a derelict exchange student at a Barcelona bar, like a girl I knew who also had a scar she wore like a lace teddy lined with gold spiked beads. She's got more likes than a wandering eye, so I let mine land in her lap. The rotunda is full of alligator tails, sly as the judge, whom I followed at least as far as his laugh lines, so her smile knows my day will end in just a slap on the wrist, while Diego Valdez, the gentleman to my left, will have to plead to an illegal right on red, a reduced charge carrying a fine that would keep his village in tortillas for a month. I want to explain to her, as with eyes closed and me inside, as she tries to forget herself, as she tries to forget why she still works here, taking pats on the ass from fat judges, she comes, as though it were penance for a broken tail light. Diego nudges me as she walks by again, but I know she wouldn't dress it up in decorum if I were down the bar from her at the Purple Frog. She'd say to her girlfriend over a pale ale draft loud enough for me to hear, I don't fuck Mexicans. They're always looking for something. Implying to the right gringo she'd be a pot of gold. The world outside of this courtroom is all profanity, so I came to plead not guilty to the charges, to seek mercy from a robed man who understands my cheap suit and desires and how ambitions die. When I approach the bench, she catches my eye and sees a man who can sit here on a Tuesday night, but also something of a Mexican. Am I wifeless with this gray hair, so pressed I can't just pay the price of a dinner out or day laborer's wage? She appears again as I stand in the cashier's line and doesn't say, I like what you told the judge, all except the end. Instead, she waves my folder in the air, looking through me the way a searchlight scans the perimeter for signs of an escape. And as some of you know, I've been doing this book where I get to go around the country and talk to poets, which is ridiculously good job when I get to do it. And I had the fortune of doing this in New Orleans, so this is called Interview with Valentine. The chicory is stale in our mouths. The water in the street was 6 feet high. Her elderly mother wasn't able to swim. The color of these walls is red bean red. Back in the day, her hoops were gold. This place used to be called True Brew. The place she fled to was Arizona. The couch she slept on was near a nest of scorpions. Her friends are all different shades. People in West Coast lines are likely not to say hello. A hurricane's better than an earthquake any day. Her mother is still alive. New Orleans neighborhoods are block to block. Her brilliant daughter is in the hospital. They are happy to see people gone. They are unnameable or not worth naming. All the projects are closed up now. These new neighborhoods are made up places. The tourist pants are down until they leave. Jambalaya is a good reason to live. The number of cigarette lighters in her car is 2. The street we want is called Mystery Street. The theory is they blew holes in the levee. Algiers is the 9th ward with trees. The time she was away was 18 months. The reason she came back was the air. The reason she came back was how could she not? The river is where you go when you're down. The prophets are always on the corners. Half the people at Mardi Gras are still from here. When you're uptown, you're uptown. New Orleans is not a Cajun city. Grand Coteau is a nice day trip. The streetcar is $1.25. The mayor is the former governor's cousin. Elysian Fields was a line we didn't cross. All these young men are traumatized. The girl who was shot was 1 year old. The programs are all cut to the bone. Words are all we have to heal. The urge to cry is from seeing the pain in you. This is still the Deep South. Her accent is what she was when she left. This is an apartment she couldn't afford. Here is something else to remember her by. This is a book written in other cities. Basin Street is the street in the song. Everything is the blues if you let it be. Bougainvillea is what you need on a balcony. Money is what's missing. Greed is why these children are hungry. The pies you heard of are Hubig's pies. The loudest sound at lunchtime is the heat bugs. The middle of the day is no time for trouble. This city is no place to be without an excuse. The best one I have is being used by someone else. Everyone is living with what's gone. The best people here are dead. That's the reason she's talking to me. Last time for 2? All right, this is the title track from the book that my now face-to-face friend Sean was kind enough to read. Song Pugilistic. I could have been 3-time champ. Big right, not enough to spare me knockouts on foreign turf. On cold canvas, I would have felt the roots of new designs spider my brain, watered with blood of cuts I swallowed rounds on end. My mind would have gone to the crocus, the flower flailing at the dead world. My mind would have mustered receptors to change eyes in the crowd to a nebulous dots, and me to a traveler through space. Hope is unearthly as fighters who hemorrhage fame, bleeding out in secret silent scenes, as widows who spend life weeping in the grave grace of motherhood or pain sweat of other men's beds. Not those ringside watching parade, but those who saw mirrored skulls when their men got up to shave, blades slicing necks, slicing lives into absolute afters and befores. I would guide them through a galaxy of sorrows until my trainer came to lift me to my feet, to see flashes of an end in his crimped face, then hear in his voice his father and children who know me as forgotten stories. My mind would go to the granddaughter stroking his hand as dementia threw him to the ropes with Sugar Rays and Smokin' Joes and Iron Mikes and Kid Somethings, assassins, busters, golden boys, bombers, and truths. I'll sing his song as I train for the return, reciting the steps to my faint encounter, counting the steps to cut off the ring and send to the preaching of gospel and hawking of cookware, the man who believed himself too clever and strong, to his dimming with a smile that shines for the heartless world, if I were so bold as to call it names and declare a meritocracy of soul. As if I could calculate the losses it would take to glide along the surface of the earth and see the beating hearts of fallen fighters everywhere and all at once, float through the barrages and connect with the force of a God come back to redeem. And so I want to close with one for Chuck. And he was the first person I got to speak to in Erie here today, and who was also a fellow, a paisan. The Italian-American poetry community kind of like nurtured me when I was very young, and so I've written a lot of poems in that vein. So this one's for Chuck. It's also for Sean because it's about Massachusetts. Scacciat, shakwat, shangat. I'm not going to translate yet. For years, I have wondered how to spell these words and what they mean. Inside the pickup's cab, tiny flag of Italy dangling from the rear view, north from Blue Plate breakfast Pawtucket to a Boston racetrack mini Mezzogiorno, Louis Prima busting from the tape deck. I, a boy, rode with two dead horsemen, Briganti, cousin and uncle. To them, everything was scacciad, sciacquad, or shangad. Scacciatela, sciacquatela, shangatela. A little shot, washed out, lame. Their cheap cotton shirts perpetually scacciad. The paint job on their rented house always sciacquad. Their old horses forever shangad. No one translated. Scacciat meant scacciat. My cousin knew it from my uncle, who knew it from his father, who knew it from the wild Provincia d'Avellino. I knew what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. I grew jealous of sciacquad, of these words, jealous that they poured like sweat from blue-collar landsmen in the hot July cab of two fat men and one fat boy, crammed together by hazy history. My uncle and my cousin, proud to be Brooklyn Italian, fled to New England for sterner Americans, more desperate paisans. Their days, one long meal, one practical joke, one rubber rat on the owner's overcoat, filling washed-out America with Neapolitan song and sport, shoplifting shoes in the name of common justice to the tune of Santa Lucia. Years later, my cousin, too young, lay crammed in a coffin 2 sizes too small. Mourners by the hundreds, his body scacciad, sciacquad from outlaw life, my old uncle shangad in a hospital bed, his final view of Boston Harbor, this vocabulary of fates defined by simple minds and lives. Now, I try to spell these words, but am too late to understand, to have them on my tongue like the taste of someone else's tears.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Don't forget about the fishbowl on the way out. Can't emphasize it enough, man. Drop a little something in there. And yeah, we can keep on bringing in poets like George. And who's our poet next week? You guys don't even remember, see. Robert Willecki from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania will be here next week. All right. So stop fiddling with that thing. No, another round of applause for George. Thank you guys for coming out and filling up the room, and God bless each and every one of you, and put some in the fishbowl in. We'll see you next Friday night.
All right, see you.